In the last couple of years, the quality bar on all social media platforms have changed, and it seems like even though smartphones are really good, you need some sort of camera to actually have the best possible content on all of your platforms, whether it is for Instagram, YouTube, or even live streaming. Now today we're taking a look at the Canon M50 mirrorless camera to see how good this camera actually is. Let's get into it. Now the M50 has a 24.1 megapixel APS-C size CMOS sensor, so it isn't a full frame camera, so you will have a 1.6 times crop. It can shoot at 10 frames per second, which is pretty good if you want to take pictures of your pets or your children. It can connect to your phone via Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and has dual pixel autofocus, which is great. And most importantly, it can even shoot 4K, even though that is a crop on a crop. It's still crisp and it still looks great. Now if you want to take a look at all the other specs, like what frame rates it can shoot in each type of video format, I have left a link down in the description below where you can go and check that out on Canon's website. You can see everything from that to all of the other sizes and weights of the camera. So if you want to see all of that, links down below. Now for a camera that's $650, the M50 can do a lot of amazing things for you and your content. Now one thing I actually like about the Canon M50 is its size. It's actually a really tiny camera, which makes it perfect for vlogs. You have the flip out screen which can easily rotate, making you able to see yourself. And it's also tiny, so it's easy to carry around. You won't get tired from holding the camera up the entire time, and you don't have to take a lot of big bags with you, as it's, once again, pretty tiny. Another great thing about the M50 is even though it is a smaller and cheaper camera, it can do so many amazing things, whether it's for photography, videography, or even as a camera for your live streams. It can do all of that, and it can do all of that amazingly. Now when it comes to using the M50 as a webcam, there's a few things I need to mention, and number one is that it actually uses an HDMI micro instead of the normal HDMI mini, which I'm kind of used to with all of the other cameras that I've had and even the EOS R that I have. And I think it's mostly because of the size of the M50 that they actually opted to use the micro. And secondly, even though it says it has a clean HDMI out, it isn't actually 100% clean. Now for example, if I plug an HDMI cable into my EOS R, the actual screen on the camera doesn't go blank. It stays on with all of the information, and it gives me an HDMI output of whatever the camera sees without all the information on there. So for example, your frame rates and everything else. Now with the M50, once you plug an HDMI in, it actually turns off this back screen and it displays this back screen on whatever you have it plugged in. Now I used to have this with my 200D as well, which means you can get a clean HDMI out if you actually press info on the back of the camera to remove all of the information on the screen. But if you use autofocus, there's actually no way to get rid of that autofocus bar or the area of where your autofocus is unless you actually turn off autofocus and turn your lens into manual focus, which for if you're live streaming is not that big of a deal since you're mainly going to be sitting still. But if you are a more lively person, or you want to show things, or you stand up a lot and you move around in your room, then this camera might not be the one for you, or unless you want to actually try and tweak the focus every time you get up and do something. Now another thing to keep in mind, this is an APS-C sensor, so you don't have a full-size sensor, which means you have a 1.6 times crop on any focal length of your lens. Now I'm not going to go into too much detail with that, but that means that if you have a 30mm lens, you multiply that by 1.6 and then you get the equivalent full frame focal length that you would have had if you used a full frame camera. Now that's all good and fine until you want to start shooting 4K, which means you're going to get another crop on that 1.6 times crop, which means that if you want to start shooting 4K video, you can actually have to get a wider lens, something like a 14 or a 16mm lens, or you're gonna have to have enough space to actually get back far enough to be able to shoot whatever you're shooting in 4K, especially if you want to have like something like this where you have enough space still around you and your subject in. Other than that, the 4K on this camera still is very crisp. It looks good. And one thing to just bear in mind with that is that you actually lose your dual pixel autofocus as well once you start shooting 4K. So just bear that in mind once you start shooting 4K, is the extra crop and the loss of the dual pixel autofocus. Now everything about this camera is pretty tiny, even the kit lens that it comes with. And this kit lens is a pretty good lens. It's a 15 to 45 mil, which should be able to cover you for those wide angle shots even in 4K. But if you actually want to get the most out of this camera, I would suggest actually upgrading the glass to something like the Sigma that I have on the camera right now, which is the Sigma 1.4. And the quality you get out of this lens and this camera is absolutely amazing. And if you don't believe me, here's a little B-roll section that I actually filmed with this camera. So let's take a little look. As far as build quality goes, it's actually a pretty heavy camera. It feels solid and it doesn't feel cheap, if that kind of makes any sense. The dials and everything feel really good. It doesn't feel like something is loose or that the buttons don't press well. And all of that actually add to a camera that is definitely worth buying. So the next question is, would I actually recommend this camera? And that is a big solid yes, but it does come with a big solid warning as well. And the warning mainly states that when you're actually going out and buying a camera, it's more important to know what you're going to be using a camera for instead of actually just going out and trying to select the best camera there is. And the reason I say this is because every camera kind of has something else that it can do, and you need to specify what you're going to be using your camera for, and then see what specs you're going to need for that. And then once you know what specs you need, go out and find a camera that has either all of those specs or most of those specs, and then actually go and buy that camera, because that is going to be the most ideal camera for you and for your setup. Now another thing is also price ranges and upgradability, and usually the higher end cameras are your full frame bodies, and those are kind of the cream of the crop of the cameras. And if you actually want to have the best cameras, you should consider getting a full frame. And then buying something like this, which is APS-C, can actually mean that 3 or 4 years down the line that you would want to upgrade, or that you would want a newer one, and then perhaps you should just consider getting a full frame camera and not having to try and sell this camera again, and rather just go for a full frame. So I would suggest looking at the M50, the Canon EOS RP, the Canon EOS R, the Sony a7 II, as well as the Sony a7 III. And I've left links with specifications and links and everything down in the description below. If you want to go check out their specifications as well as their prices on Amazon, I've left everything down there. And hopefully that will be able to help you make a better informed decision, as these are kind of a wide range of cameras. They all have a few different specs. If you're trying to save a little money but still get a full frame, I would suggest looking at the RP or even the a7 II, as both of those cameras are amazing. They're both full frame. They can do most things. The a7 II is a little better than the RP in terms of specs, but the RP is a little easier to use, especially if you have older lenses and stuff. So do check all of that out. The comment section, everything will be right there. But if you're mainly looking for a camera just for YouTube videos and for your live streams, and that's basically what it's going to be doing, and the odd photography here and there, this camera it's going to be more than you'll ever need. Really, it's really that good. And as always, if you like this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and also hit that little bell notification to get notified when I post more videos like this, or just knowledgeable videos where I teach you guys how to do different things. All of that coming to the channel this year. And as always, if you have any questions on which camera you need to buy, ask me down in the comment section below, or if you want to come and ask me live, I stream on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoon at 8 p.m. South African time. So if you want to ask me anything really, not just cameras, pop in there, or if you just want to hang out, you're also more than welcome to do that. Hope to see you guys there, and until next time, cheers.